Hello, history buffs. Today I am going to share with you some amazing facts about one of history's most famous explorers, Marco Polo, that you may never know. Marco Polo was born in the 13th century, the son of a Venetian merchant. His name is still talked about today as a symbol of the cultural exchange between East and West. But there are 9 amazing facts about his life and adventures that are never told in textbooks or popular history books. Number 1. Marco Polo was actually a prisoner. Have you ever heard of Marco Polo's famous travel book Travels in the East? Actually, the book has a surprising birth story. In 1298, during the war between Genoa and Venice, Marco Polo was captured by the enemy and imprisoned in a Genoese prison. There he met a writer named Rustichello da Pisa, who was also a prisoner. The two hit it off, and the Book of Eastern Observations was born, with Marco dictating and Rustichello writing. So this world-famous book was actually written in prison. The book is now read around the world and translated into numerous languages. The fact that the birthplace of this book was a prison is truly turning a difficult situation into a blessing in disguise. Ironically, Marco Polo's imprisonment has forever etched his name in history. Number 2. His name was actually Marco Emiglione. Now, here is a question for you all. What do you think Marco Polo's real name is? Actually, it is Marco Emiglione. Surprised? The surname Poro was actually a nickname for his family? In Venice at that time, it was common to call family and clan by specific nicknames. The nickname Poro comes from the Latin word poro, meaning pole. This indicates that his family was engaged in long-distance trade. In other words, the Polo family was a nuance of merchants who went to the ends of the world. It was a fitting nickname for their adventurous spirit and business acumen. However, Marco himself signed his name Marco Emiglione on official documents. In an irony of history, his nickname became more famous than his real name. Number 3. Couldn't speak Chinese. Marco Polo is famous for his great trip to China. It is said that he stayed there for a whopping 17 years. So what do you think his level of Chinese was? Surprisingly, Marco Polo could barely speak Chinese. His main language was actually Persian. At the time, Persian was widely used as a lingua franca for international trade. Marco Polo mostly communicated with the Chinese people through an interpreter who spoke Persian. This makes sense given the linguistic environment along the Silk Road at the time. So many different languages were spoken, and Persian functioned as the lingua franca, common language. The records of his travels show that he was fluent in Italian, Persian, Mongolian, and to a lesser extent Turkish. So, although he had the ability to be multilingual, he never mastered Chinese. Number 4. Spaghetti was not invented. When it comes to Italian cuisine, pasta is what it is all about. And many people have probably heard that Marco Polo brought pasta back to Italy, but this is actually a big misunderstanding. In fact, we know that pasta already existed in Italy in at least the 12th century, long before Marco Polo went to China. Going back even further, there are records of a flat pasta-like food called lagunum in ancient Roman times. So, it is not as if Marco Polo brought nothing back with him. What he introduced from China was udon-like noodles. It is believed that this Chinese concept of noodles had a new influence on the already existing Italian pasta culture, leading to the diversification of pasta types and cooking methods. In other words, Marco Polo did not invent pasta, but he did contribute to enriching Italian pasta culture. So he played a major role in terms of food culture exchange. Number 5. His journey was a family tradition. Marco Polo's great adventure, did it begin with his single outlandish idea? Actually, it did not. Before Marco Polo was born, his father Niccolo and his uncle Maffeo had already made a journey to the east. Around 1260, the two crossed the Black Sea, from the Crimean Peninsula, up the Volga River, through Central Asia, and reached China. On this journey they had a meeting with Kublai Khan, sovereign of the Mongol Empire. It was during this first trip to the east that Marco was born. When his father and uncle returned home, Mark was already 15 years old. In 1271, at the age of 17, he left with his father and uncle for a second trip to the east. This was the beginning of that famous 24-year journey. In other words, Marco Polo's adventures were an extension of the family business. The Polo family had been a family of merchants engaged in long-distance trade for generations. Today, it would be like a family working for an international trading company or multinational corporation. Marco took the family business, so to speak, and made it even bigger. Marco Polo's spirit of adventure was not his alone. It was the DNA passed down through the Polo family. He was the most successful inheritor of the family tradition that made it world famous. Number 6. Escorting Kublai Khan's daughter. Marco Polo is famous for his relationship with the Mongol Emperor Kublai Khan. However, not much is known about the important missions he performed for Kublai Khan. Marco Polo was more than just a merchant and traveler. He earned Kublai Khan's trust and was sometimes entrusted with important missions for the empire. One of the most interesting of these missions was to escort Kublai Khan's daughter, Princess Kokachin. In 1291, Marco Polo was assigned to escort the Kokatans to the Persian Prince Arghun. This was a journey of about 5,000 kilometers by sea. The journey was not an easy one. Pirate threats, storms, pestilence, and many other dangers awaited them. Of the 600 crew members on board at the time of departure, only 18 survived upon arrival. However, Marco Polo successfully accomplished this difficult mission and escorted the Cockatoo princess safely to Persia. This success was a testament to Marco Polo's leadership, adventurous spirit, and diplomatic flair. At the same time, it shows how much trust he had earned from Kublai Khan. Today, it would be like being assigned to guard international dignitaries and diplomatic missions. Marco Polo was not only a merchant, but also a diplomat who served as a bridge between Eastern and Western cultures. Number 7. Spreading the word million. We use the word million every day, don't we? But it was actually Marco Polo who popularized this word in Europe. In 13th century Europe, the concept of million was rarely used. This is because the scale of the economy at that time did not need to deal with such a large number on a daily basis. However, Marco Polo frequently used the word milioni, million in Italian, when describing the wealth of China in his Book of Views of the East. The figures were unimaginable to Europeans at the time. In Kublai Khan's palace, there are 1 million people coming and going. In the capital of China, there are over 1 million houses, and so on. The word milioni spread throughout Europe as Marco Polo's books were translated into various languages. Many of the modern words for million, such as million in French, million in English, and millionen in German, were born during this period. Interestingly, Marco Polo was nicknamed Mr. Miglioni in his native Venice. This was because his stories were so exaggerated and unbelievable. Today, the word million is taken for granted in many fields, including economics, demographics, and science. It is one of Marco Polo's achievements that we are able to use this word in our daily lives. Number 8. He didn't bend his story until the last moments of his life. The last scene of Marco Polo's life is an episode that epitomizes his personality. Marco Polo's amazing tale of adventure was doubted by many people since that time. Many people said that Marco Polo's amazing adventures were too exaggerated and made up. On January 8, 1324, at the age of 69, Marco Polo lay in bed. His family and the clergy gathered there to urge him to make a final confession. But Marco Polo's response was surprising. He said, "I have not told you half of what I have seen and heard. I have not told you half of what I have seen and heard." These words show that he insisted on the veracity of his experiences right up to his last moments. Even in the last moments of his life, he never bent his story. These last words speak to the sincerity of Marco Polo and the vastness of the world he experienced. For him, stories of his own adventures may not have been exaggerations, but rather understatements. Today we can see amazing sights from all over the world in photographs and videos. But to the people of the 13th century, Marco Polo's stories would have been like a modern person hearing about the wonders of the universe or the deep sea. His sincerity and inquisitiveness would have been the same for today's scientists and explorers. Number 9. There is an animal named after him. Now for the final surprise. Did you know that there is an animal named after Marco Polo? That animal is a wild sheep called Marco Polo sheep. Its scientific name is Ovis amanpoli. This sheep is still found in the mountainous areas of Central Asia, especially around the Pamir Plateau. It is found in Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and parts of China. The most distinguishing feature of the Marco Polo sheep is their enormous horns. The male's horns can reach 1.9 meters when straightened. This is the largest of any wild sheep on Earth. Marco Polo describes this sheep in detail in his Book of Eastern Observances. He was amazed by its size and magnificent horns, writing that it had horns of 6 palms, about 50 centimeters. However, the sheep was not officially recognized by the scientific community until 1841, some 550 years after Marco Polo. It was officially described by Russian explorer Nikolai Severtsov, who gave it his name as a species-subspecies name in honor of Marco Polo. Today, the Marco Polo sheep is endangered and conservation efforts are underway. This remarkable animal, which Marco Polo documented more than 700 years ago, still reminds us of the spirit of adventure and discovery. How was it? Marco Polo's life was full of more surprises than we could have ever imagined. Marco Polo's adventures and discoveries continue to bring us new perspectives and discoveries today, more than 700 years later. I believe that his life teaches us the importance of curiosity, inquisitiveness, and integrity. We who live today should also be able to maintain the Marco Polo spirit of finding surprises and discoveries in everyday life. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and like our channel. In the next installment, we will share these surprising facts about another historical figure. So, enjoy the next installment.